I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is, who are you voting against? Because no one's even pretending that they're voting for anyone anymore. This has just become a game of preventing the lesser evil. Many people are no longer playing this game more than any time that I can remember in my lifetime. So I'm going to examine a few of the Substacks that have come right out and said, I will not be voting. And I am celebrating that and taking that as a step of progress. The first Substacker is Allison Gray with Who Are You Voting For? Allison makes the excellent observation that no one is qualified to rule over you, and therefore she will not be endorsing anyone for that job. She also looks at how everything we do is a vote in the energetic universe, that how we spend money, who we spend our time with, who we want to be around, what we bring into our consciousness, those are all things that she says are really the kind of vote that matters. She also mentions the phrase, imagination, and that brought to mind my episode of that title, which I will be linking at the end because I think that's what we really need now, is to image a nation. Next is the always delightful Conspiracy Sarah with I'm exercising my right not to vote. Sarah makes the point that no law, no government, no system could exist without our acquiescence to it. So refusing to comply or go along with it is an important part of that process. As another meme says, we are demeaning sheep because at least sheep don't vote on who's going to be their master. Sarah also goes through a list of all the presidents since Nixon and what their slogans were and then what they actually did. This is something we need to keep in mind when we think that voting makes a difference. Sarah also points out that there is now an app where you can find out whether your friends and neighbors have voted and then shame them into voting, of course, only if you think that's going to help your cause. Isn't that ridiculous? Then there's an interview of James Corbett by Whitney Webb called Dissecting the Selection, two of the most astute people on the planet when it comes to politics. And this analyzed things in a way that gave me a lot of new information. One thing they talked about was the term deep state and how that was developed by Peter Dale Scott. And one of my wake-up moments was when I went to a conference on 9/11 and the deep state, in which Peter Dale Scott was one of the speakers, and so was Ellen Brown, and that's the first time I found out how the money system really works. So that then became whatever it was that were the people in the government on the other side, rather than being the people behind the government, no matter which side was presumably in charge. And then it went through another permutation where to Democrats it was, oh, these are the consistent bureaucratic people and they keep things running no matter who's in charge, so you can trust them. This is a complete perversion of that concept. James also talks about Peter Thiel, who he's done a 2-part series on, and they mention that both Peter Thiel and Elon Musk gave Trump money that was conditional on J.D. Vance being the VP. So this is all very strange and really mixes up that idea that there is anything that matters or anyone that's going to do anything different. I really recommend listening to this interview because it was really nuanced and went deep into what goes beyond just the things that we all, I think, already know about. An early adopter of this position was Tonica of Visceral Adventures, who did a pox on both your political houses. In this, she talks about how Team R and Team D is just an intramural scrimmage, with really both being on the same side and just entertaining us. One of the things that Tonica presents is a 3-minute political analysis by David Graeber that is brilliant, and I'll link that in the Substack. He talks about how it's a ploy that the right will have these figures like George Bush Jr. who present themselves as dumb, as, oh shucks, I'm just one of the guys. And then, predictably, the intellectual elites from the left make fun of them. And that makes people say, oh, they'd probably do that to me too. They probably think I'm stupid too. So they become relatable even though they graduated from an Ivy League school that their parent practically paid for. This is something that we have fallen for again and again and again, and Trump is the latest. In James Corbett's conversation with Whitney Webb, they talk about how the term libertarian, like deep state, has been taken over and made to mean something that it never did. So they're talking about the need for definitions, which is a big topic of mine. Let me relay a comment thread that was with Marta, who does Becoming You, Me, We. She wrote, I visited my family and had intense conversations about politics. My brother still sees the good intentions of the Democrats, gives them the benefit of the doubt. I shared your list of how to have a better argument, and we all liked the list very much, patted ourselves on the back for liking each other. I tried to get everyone to talk about what evidence would change your or my mind, but no one wanted to address that. I'm not sure there is evidence that could change my mind into trusting Democrats or really any national politician. What about you? Is there evidence that could lead you to trusting a national politician? I answered, since we already have the liking each other covered, I'll define the terms in your question. Is there evidence that could lead you to trusting a national politician? Lead towards is a good phrase that indicates a continuum, not an absolute. So I'd interpret that as what evidence would move me towards rather than away. Trust is something I define the same as belief, making up your mind in advance of the evidence or experience. I don't believe in believing or trusting, even in personal relationships. Trust implies an unspoken contract that you've given someone power over you in exchange for something else. That's unfair to the person who's being trusted because they may not have even wanted that power. It binds the other with self-sacrifice. National is a clue as to what that unspoken agreement is. Why do we want one person to have power over 330 million people? I think because we identify with our candidate and feel it will give us power to impose what we want on all the rest. I think we need to question that desire within ourselves. Politician, from its etymology, would be a person who determines policy. That's not what presidents do. They act in ways that supersede policy, make exceptions to it, or veto policy that's been laboriously set by Congress. What's the point of having policy? To rephrase your question, is there evidence that could move you towards giving up your power over yourself for an implicit contract of power over 330 million others? My answer is yes. The only legitimate use of power over others, as in a parent, is to give someone eventual power over themselves. If any national candidate had a platform of giving communities economic control over their own labor and housing, I'd devote as much power as I had to getting them elected. Along with the word trust, though, is expecting that someone will do what they say they're going to do. And no one's even bothering with that anymore. Who needs a platform? Along with saying, who are you voting for? You could be asking, and what do they stand for? And no one will know. This is where I disagree with Allison and Sarah and James and Whitney. I don't think that we can vote with our dollars. I think we've been reduced to a little bit of empty virtue signaling. I think that we're not imagining a nation into being. There's no imagining that's going on in any important way, especially as a collective. And I don't think that us refusing to participate and give our endorsement to the system makes any difference to the system. The system goes on and chews us up, and to refuse to comply, you have to be pretty independent and not need a job or a house or anything where they have leverage over you. And then I look at James and his solutions watch and whether we should be part of our community, as he says. He says, build local community, get offline and make connections. The best thing I can do for my local connections is keep my mouth shut. That is the thing that would blow up and make it impossible for me to go dance with my friends without having arguments. Keep these online connections because they're the people where you are imagining a new future with. But that's something we should be doing much more deliberately. A year and a half ago, Matthew Crawford interviewed me on what do I want in a president. And this was way back when RFK Jr. was fresh and bright and shiny. What I said is that I want someone who will decentralize and get out of the way. What does that mean? That means economically to give us economic power as communities over our own labor and our housing, which is what backs our labor. That's something that we can develop. Over the last 5 years, since 2020, we have been dismantling the empire of lies. I don't know when I ever thought I would see the level of digging into the deception that's going on now. Things I didn't even know I was being deceived about now are all coming to light. And I don't even know how deep that goes, but I am feeling confident that there are people who are ready to face it and teach me what I'm missing. The next 5 years I see as building the future. And I'd like to revive one of my domains, which is a 2020vision.org, and make it into something that is a hub of us looking at what would be possible in all these different areas with the system change of having us do the peer-to-peer banking that creates the credit for the housing that is the mortgage and then puts that into the community so that we can have a true alternative and we can own our own lives. For more, this is I Mage a Nation, and this is dreaming and scheming on a couple of actual applications of how my keratology system could be applied. Let's start dreaming.